President Donald Trump is firing back at former FBI Director James Comey after excerpts were released from a new tell-all book. In the memoir, A Higher Loyalty, Comey slams the president as untethered to the truth and describes his leadership as ego-driven. This comes nearly a year after President Trump fired Comey. Today, the president is punching back, calling the former top U.S. law enforcement official a slimeball. Modalengi brings us more from the White House.
James Comey doesn't hold back his views of President Trump in a new book set to be released next week. He describes Mr. Trump as a liar and a bully and compares his inner circle to the mafia, lying about all things large and small in service to some code of loyalty that put the organization above morality and above the truth. Comey also writes about the now infamous Steele dossier, written by a former British spy, that includes allegations of a tryst with Russian prostitutes, allegations the president denies. Unprompted, he brought up what he called the golden showers thing, Comey writes, adding that the president asked him to investigate the document because it bothered him if there was even a 1% chance his wife, Melania, thought it was true. Comey tells ABC News he's not sure what to believe.
Honestly, never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know.
The White House is pushing back hard on Comey's book, calling him a disgruntled ex-employee who has trouble telling the truth. President Trump struck back on Twitter this morning, saying James Comey is a proven leaker and liar. He added, he is a weak and untruthful slimeball, and he finished saying, it was my great honor to fire James Comey.
We know that he's selling books and that we also know that he's had a difficult time completely telling the truth under oath.
The FBI had to amend inaccurate portions of Comey's congressional testimony last May. Modalengi, CBS News, the White House.
Asawin Suebsaeng is a White House reporter for the Daily Beast, and he joins us now from our Washington bureau. He likes to go by Swin, so I will abide by that. Swin, what stood out to you in this book? Of course, there are a lot of kind of personality, insults and barbs going back and forth when you consider President Trump's tweets this morning. But what was remarkable to you in what we know so far?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me and my colleague, Lachlan Marquet, who broke the news on this early yesterday morning, that in the book, Comey isn't just being rough on the President of the United States. He's sort of deputizing at least one other senior White House official, current senior White House official, into that role, because he recounts, again, according to James Comey's account, that's going to be published in this book that's coming out early next week. He writes that within minutes of his firing being made public back in May 2017, he gets a call from then head of DHS John Kelly, now White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, and according to Comey, Kelly unloads on the president, saying that his actions and the president himself have been dishonorable, and that's quote from James Comey, that John Kelly was basically calling, not basically, explicitly calling President Trump dishonorable for how he got rid of James Comey, saying that he felt sick to his stomach and that he wanted to resign over this. According to Comey, the then fired FBI director told John Kelly, no, we need people with honor and integrity within the administration, so please don't leave. And then John Kelly, of course, did not end up resigning or following through on this reported threat or consideration to do so. Now, I would be remiss to say, or if I didn't say, that the White House account of that phone call is markedly different. They don't dispute that a call took place, but Kelly has told in a version that he has given to at least some other White House officials that the call did occur, but it was about a minute long, and the gist of it was, I don't know why you were fired, and I wish you well. In this version that John Kelly tells, or at least tells now, there is nothing about anything being dishonorable or any expressed desire to quit the job from the Trump administration. So it's up to your viewers to decide which account they prefer or which one they want to believe.
It's also interesting in the wake of reports that John Kelly may be on the way out. He had famously been photographed at events with President Trump with his face in his hands. And even yesterday, the White House sent out images. President Trump tweeted them of President Trump's meeting with agricultural officials. And in that official White House picture, you can see John Kelly with his face in his hands. Interesting point. I want to move on to what the former FBI director says about the U.S. response to Russia. He says that the White House under President Trump was consumed with how to spin the intelligence rather than formulating a strategy to counter it. What does that say about the White House priorities when you line that up with the fact that they were so slow to enact punishments toward Russia for that act?
Well, the White House's priorities are very much, and particularly on these issues, the president's priorities. And Trump, in what you were talking about earlier, someone who's consumed by grievance peddling on this issue, and someone who can't get over what he thinks are these personal slights on these very big issues. In the book, according to Comey, the interactions he had with President Trump were very much based on what President Trump thought was correct in his mind, and the disagreements or complaints he had. And Comey writes in the book that he was taken aback, at least somewhat, by how the president and his inner circle, who he met with, were not concerned with the Russian interference issues, either in the future or what had happened in the 2016 election. And that they were very much focused in getting or hoping that the intelligence community would come around to President Trump's thinking and his conviction that whatever the Russians did or did not do in terms of meddling or interference in the 2016 presidential election did not have any effect on it whatsoever. Now, that's what President Trump really wanted James Comey and others to say, but it is something that Comey and other senior officials and people in the intelligence community repeatedly told Trump and his inner circle, we do not know that and cannot say that.
Yeah, President Trump does not want the legitimacy of his presidency diminished. What do you make of the personal insults, apparent insults, that James Comey makes in this book about President Trump's height, his skin, hand size, tie length? It seems out of character for James Comey. He calls this book a higher loyalty. What's the point there?
Well, it may be about a higher loyalty, but he isn't completely averse to taking a lower road on this. Former FBI Director James Comey knows exactly what he's doing here, and what he's been saying and writing as of late is almost engineered specifically to get under the president's skin, as if Comey, and I can't see directly into his heart and mind right now, but if I were to interpret what he's doing, I would say it's very much the actions of someone who wants to almost goad the leader of the free world into making more wild pronouncements, or hate tweet him more, or get him to lash out more at his current adversary, James Comey, in public.
And he succeeded. President Trump called him a slime ball. He's calling him a leaker and a liar. Ironic when we're discussing the potential pardoning of Scooter Libby, who was found guilty for leaking information. But he also says, President Trump says James Comey should be prosecuted. What should we make of that?
Well, we should make of that the President of the United States has been on a tear, not just on Twitter and in public statements, but also in private for months now, about how people in the so-called deep state, or the people in the DOJ, FBI, intelligence community who are all lined up against him and his presidency should be prosecuted for things like leaking, and should be called out and gone after for subversion, or at the very least what the president is imagining in his own mind and what he's seeing on Fox News as this alleged subversion. And I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about how in Comey's book he writes that Trump's behavior reminded him of that of a mob boss or a mafia don. Ironically enough, if you look back decades ago to Trump quotes that appeared in an issue of New York Magazine, I believe this was in the early 90s, that is bizarrely an image that not only Comey apparently has of President Trump, but a past Donald Trump had of himself. He would refer to himself as someone who would make actually a very good mob boss in a conversation he had with a friend in a limo. So funny enough that the negative characterization that James Comey has of Trump now is the positive one that Trump had in his own mind of himself decades ago.
All right, Swin, great to chat with you, and so much more to discuss about this book. We'll save it for another time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.